Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beyond Limits show. I'm very excited because I have a special guest, Charissa, with me right now. And I have been excited to have this conversation for a few weeks because she's bringing a topic that you're all going to need to know about. She is a successful entrepreneur. She's going to tell her story, but I also love her depth and the way she really brings the role of ancient lineages and alchemy work into everything that we do now and really the role that plays. So, Charissa, welcome to Beyond Limits show.
Thank you for having me. It's such an honor.
So, can you really introduce yourself? Let us know, your story, where you came from, and kind of how you went into this work. I know you also have a product line, but kind of for anyone who's not familiar with you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm from London, Ontario, Canada, and I have three children. I was a school teacher for over 15 years. So I went to the university here, Teachers College at Western University, which I think you went to Western, didn't you?
I went to Queens.
Oh, you went to Queens. Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody recently I was talking to, they did kinesi. Oh, no, I think it was Haley. Do you know Haley?
No.
Bowler Cook is her name. She went to Western. I just was on a podcast. I thought it was you. But yeah, so I went to Western, did teachers college, was a teacher. And then I started a product company while I was teaching kindergarten. And that I started, it was really by accident, but I think divine intervention. And this is really how I started getting into like esoterics and the spiritual realm was the way the product business started. I had heard a voice tell me to make lip balms. It sounds crazy to say the story
No.
now, but that is how it happened. And I was lying in bed one night and I was thinking about the kids in my classroom who didn't have any healthy food options. And in our class, we'd always say, okay, first snack, get a healthy snack. And there was quite a few kids who they would come up to me and they'd say, Miss Skinner, that was my maiden name, Skinner. I don't have a healthy snack. So I'd go to my desk, I would grab an apple or a banana that I had, and I'd give it to them. So anyway, I'm lying in bed, I'm thinking about these kids, and I'm with my second baby at the time. And I thought there's got to be a better way than them keep coming up to me. Why don't I just have a bunch of fruit in the classroom? They can grab it anytime they want, big basket of fruit. But I didn't want it to be where I was always just pulling out of my own pocket because that's what you do as a teacher. I'm like, what can I do to make this like, where I can buy something? And so, anyways, make lip balms and sell these lip balms and then go buy some fruit for your classroom. And so I'm really excited. I couldn't even hardly sleep after. And I'm thinking, but I don't know how to make lip balms. I've never done this before. Like I had never done anything like that. And so I started researching and looking up how to do this. And I was getting into making my own natural products anyways with my little ones at home, like cleaning products and whatnot. So then I started making bath bombs and lip balms and I started selling them to friends and family and to the local community, started getting into little boutiques here. And then I would buy fruit from the funds, which I called Fruit for Kindy Kids back then. And that's how it all began. And then it just snowballed into making more product, going into shows. And then I eventually, which is a long story, but I eventually niched into making aftercare products for microblading artists, cosmetic nurse injectors, and tattoo artists. So, and that was also a divine intervention story as well. But that's how the journey began. And as I was on this journey of growing the product business, I started to scale back on teaching because the product business was growing to the point where I left my full-time teaching job. Along the way, women in business came and they're like, how did you do this? Teach me your ways. So I started doing business coaching, but also bringing in the intuitive realm as well with my coaching.
I love how it all started with just make lip balms because sometimes I think people dismiss, like they get downloads like that, but they dismiss them and they don't actually take action because they may not have seen the full thing. And I guarantee when you were thinking about making lip balms to buy some fruit for your classroom, you weren't thinking about, the Crushed Aftercare for the microblading and the tattoos. Like that wasn't even on your mind, but just you moving with that action kind of revealed the path ahead of you.
Yeah, and I had no idea what microblading was. I mean, I've always been someone who's I've always taken care of myself, but I've never been one to be really into the beauty trends and what was going on. So yeah, definitely would have never predicted in a million years that I'd be where I am today. And my husband, Andrew, he was working at the jail and now he's full time over at the product company
Hmm.
making lip balms. Well, he doesn't he doesn't make lip balms anymore, but we would always joke that he went from a corrections officer, a jail guard to making lip balms full time. But now he's CEO over there, and we have team members who package and make all the products over there.
What would you say? Because a product business is very also different than, service based or just having like coaching or mentorship because you have a lot of upfront costs, like it's a physical thing. What would you like to share in terms of the biggest learning points or the biggest things you think people need to know if they're like, okay, I want to start a product based business and how that's really different or like the big things that you kind of like learned early on that you were like, if I had known this early on making products, I like something would have been different or like I wish I would have known that.
Trying to think because I feel like I was gonna say like trying to buy product in bulk where you can save. But when
Hmm.
you're at the beginning, you can't really do that. Like you have to start where you're at. So now we buy massive amounts of tubes, massive amounts of coconut oil, but I had to start where I was at. So maybe this is actually advice because we
Yeah.
can see the bigger picture and think, okay, I want to buy all that stuff, but you don't have the money yet to
Yeah.
invest in all that inventory. And I remember, actually, this is really good. This is a good question because I'm remembering now. There was this lady who was also doing lip balms, and she was reaching out to the community to sponsor her because she wanted money to get the supplies and whatnot. And so she had like a GoFundMe or something. I don't know if it was GoFundMe, but something like that. And for me, I thought that was interesting. Sure, anyone can do whatever they want. But the way I did it was buy what you can, started with $80, create the product, and then sell it at triple the price, use that money, invest again. And that's what I kept doing. So I started really small versus like I never have had any investors or, anyone giving us money. It was always that way where I started off where I was at, used what I did at the time. Like I didn't have a website for years.
Hmm.
People ordered through Instagram or Facebook and they DM'd me. And then once you start to build that revenue coming in, then you take the next steps. So the next step for me was let's get a real website so I don't have to keep going back and forth. Someone else build the website. Or with photos, I was taking my own photos for a while. Again, until that income started rolling in. And then it's like these micro steps of investing. We didn't just hire a team, I didn't just move into a production space. It took time to get there. And then it was like, this is where intuition comes in and also working with, universe, but then also strategy comes in where it's like, okay, is this the time to move out of my house into an actual office, into a production space? So it had to be a lot of trust and faith. There were signs as well from the universe, like always, this is why I'm in this work. But then it also logically made sense because the income was coming in. But I can tell you, it was never, and it still is never, where I'm like, we have so much money coming in. It's time to move out of our house into this production space and hire all this staff. Like it's always where it's stretching us. It's always very edgy. We just hired someone new and we're like, well, do we really like have all this excess cash flow? No, but we know where we want to go. So we have to move accordingly. But it's never crazy, like overdoing it. It's always just stretching us. But then there has to be that trust that when we hire this new staff, now Andrew can be in this role of sales and reaching out and marketing, and I can step more into that versus him back packaging up orders.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make sense as we're scaling in this moment.
I love how you said that because with the stretching, it's like you stretch a little bit and then it collapses, stretch a little bit, collapses versus at the beginning being like, well, I don't have like, a professional production or a factory or something. So I need to wait until I have the capital to do that. It's like, well, no, you need to start making moves so that you get to the
Mhm.
place where eventually that will be a little bit more of a stretch and a stretch.
Yeah.
And then you generate more momentum. And you've never been, from what I hear, like in that waiting. You're like always thinking the next, how do we stretch a little bit so that we can collapse the results and then be able to make those moves.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I know you mentioned like intuition and trust and how that's been kind of brought in. I'd love to talk about alchemy because I don't think I've seen anyone talk about alchemy the way, at least the way you do.
Yeah.
And I love you bring ancient Egypt. And I'm like, yes, let's talk about ancient alchemy.
Yeah.
How does that fit into the way you live your life or the way you think about things or like the perspective you have on the world? And also for anyone listening, what is alchemy? Because they may not even know what the word means or at least what it means to you.
Yeah. So, like, most people think about turning lead into gold, right? But I'm thinking of it as more of a personal transformation or on a spiritual level. So, this is where you're literally shifting your identity. You're transforming. So, I like to think of the analogy of like the caterpillar into the butterfly. And this is a new thing for me that I've started talking about with my mentorship and my leadership, but it makes so much sense. Like, I've been so into self identity and I've gone through these, massive transformations, going from a kindergarten teacher to where I am now. I'm always obsessed with learning about like ancient, times and esoteric teachings. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like alchemy is in everything. So it really is that, that transformation, right? Going from the lead into the gold, or your old self into your newer self. Just it's elevation, right? As transformation is ascending into that next level self. But instead of it being like, just think how your next level self would think, or just move like her. It's like when you go through the alchemy process, there's like a depth that happens. It's not always pretty. So there's 7 stages to alchemy. And I've been reflecting recently on, my different transformations or the loops I've been through where there hasn't been much change, even though I can see where I want to go. I can see that next level me. And it's because there's the different stages, and what can happen is people can get midway through the stages, but then they'll loop back, and then they're starting at the beginning of the alchemy transformation phase.
Are these transformation phases like rites of passage, like kind of like initiations? Like what are these like 7 stages? Is it
Yeah.
like the 7 stages of like the caterpillar essentially becoming the butterfly? Would you say like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it can go like really deep. Like, you can have massive, like, this is a huge alchemy. But then I also think alchemy can be applied in things that aren't so crazy and significant. Like it could be like maybe restructuring your business model, right?
Mm.
Where it's like, okay, maybe before you did whatever it was you used to do, now you're shifting, okay, there. Or it could be something drastic and life changing where, maybe you used to be married and now you're going into the single life, that's going to bring you more joy. This is the hardest decision you've ever made. The alchemy process applies to that. So
Mm.
like there is this, and then like you said with the rite of passage, yes, you can go deeper, as in you evolving at this really deep level, and go through the alchemy stages as well. But again, it can be for your product suite or your pricing, that
Yeah,
kind
so
of
it's
thing.
both like the micro, but also like the
Yeah.
macro. It's always present, those kind of like same stages or same transformation process on
Mhm.
big and
Yeah.
small scale.
And it's something that I started to notice. That's why I was like, this is huge. Like, I got to bring this into conversations because there's so much talk around self identity shifting, but this has been going on for thousands of years, which is what I'm studying right now. I'm learning about, where did alchemy begin and how they used it back in, ancient Greece and Egypt and stuff like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been around for so long. But when they did it, it wasn't just, I'm going to speak like her, like they actually went through the alchemy process.
And this is where things like the Hermetic principles come in and all of that, that I think that they're starting to be talked about more, but I find like so fascinating is that a lot of like the answers have always been like they're very ancient answers, a lot of the answers
Yes.
that we've kind of like been forgotten or like we need to like remember.
Yeah.
And I love that you talk so much about it's not just that surface level. Like to me, alchemy is it's a deep transformation from the inside out. Like you can't do just the surface level things like I don't know, wear the lipstick she wears if
Yeah.
you're not also doing those other deeper, I'm sure those deeper layers. So maybe like the outer layer could be like that, but the other 7, if you're missing, you're probably never going to get to the alchemy because you're operating on maybe like the first layer, second layer of the alchemy, and you never actually get through all of those seven or all the ones that you need to fully transform.
Yeah.
Yes?
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
What would you say is one of like the most interesting or something interesting you've learned recently or that you really kind of like blew your mind when it came to alchemy and all of these ancient either practices or ways of being that you're like, whoa, why are people either not talking about this? Why have, has this been shut down? Anything like that?
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a couple things coming through. Well, one, you just kind of touched on it where it's like these have been ancient practices. They've been known for thousands of years. And one thing I'm thinking and noticing, and I've been posting a little bit about, is that I think people are looking for these secret answers. Like there's something different, but most people know the basics of the law of attraction, which is like the laws of the universe or hermetics. There's the hermetics principles, which is like the law of mentalism, the law of gender, the law of cause and effect, right? Like law of vibration, all of those things. And we all know it. But I think so many times people are looking for something outside them, and it's like, you really just need to know this. Like, if you know the laws of the universe and the process of alchemy. And the reason why I believe alchemy is so important is because there's the awareness of the transformation. And so if we're not consciously aware, then this is when we can have the setbacks, or we can loop, or we can be in victim mentality. It's not working for me. But if we're consciously aware of, okay, like, why does this keep happening? Whatever. Maybe you're not having the sales that you want, or maybe, yeah, you're just not where you want to be in your business. It's like, hold on a minute. I know that I desire something else. You're maybe desiring to have more aligned clients, or be speaking on stages, or writing your book, like whatever it is. You're seeking something different, and something's not working. You're like, okay, wait a minute. Instead of being like, this is horrible, like, woe is me, or whatever, it's like, wait a minute. I'm just transforming. I'm going somewhere new, and I'm elevating, which means I need to go through this alchemy process, which isn't always easy. And so when you're aware of the alchemy process, then it's like you're way more empowered, because you're moving from this conscious frequency of, I get this. Alchemy is just a part of life if you're someone who's evolving, right? And we should always be evolving. But so once you're aware of that, then it's like you're not going backwards. You're only knowing this is like working for me, right? This is working through me, is what they say with alchemy, right? Because it's working through you and who you're being, right? So in the alchemy process, there's the beginning is calcination. So this is where we're going to burn everything down. You're like, this isn't working. And again, it's not everything. You don't have to burn down your marriage and then your products. It's like specifically to whatever it is. So it could be your business model. Okay. It doesn't, like, some people may totally burn down their business. Like, I'm going through the alchemy process right now. They may totally burn it down, go from a business coach to a health coach. They're like, that's done, burnt it down, transforming into here, right? Which, you've done this. You just did it not too long ago. Or it could simply be you're still a business coach, but it looks different, right? Maybe you're shifting your offers, you're shifting, like what I'm going through right now is I still mentor women in business, but instead of being like a business coach, I'm doing quotes right now for those quotes with my fingers. I've retitled myself as an alchemy leader. And so we do more of the energetics work, laws of the universe, bring in hermeticism, alchemy, or I already said that. And then, strategy has to be there, but aligned strategy, soul strategy. So I'm going through that right now. So I know, I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Even though this is hard, it doesn't mean anything's wrong with me. It doesn't mean I'm failing. It just means this is a part. And so burning down what you've always known, the calcination phase, isn't easy to do, right? And then you go into even the stages of separation, which is the third phase. And this one, so when you asked about, what kind of surprised me or what stood out, I have been studying Benjamin Hardy's work, which he talks about.
Yeah.
You love it? Or is that, did we just talk about that?
No, but I just
Why? What are you? Is that what you're?
I just like love his stuff.
Yeah. So it really surprised me because a lot of what he says is alchemy. He just isn't he probably doesn't know it. He probably doesn't know that he's literally leading people to do alchemy work. And so one of his big things, and his book 10x is easier than 2x. My book is like wrinkled, it's falling apart, it's highlighted like crazy. I'm obsessed with this book. And so in the book, there's a huge part where he's like, if you want to go 10x, it's not about doing 10x more, it's about being 10x more. And so this means, what would the 10x you be doing? And so 80% of what you have been doing to get you to where you are now has to be let go. And so we know already, maybe most people I think know that, okay, we have to release things that no longer serve us. You know how you always hear that? That's the idea of what he's saying. And then shifting into what actually is coherent with that next level you. In alchemy, in the phase 3, which is separation, that is what you're doing. You are separating everything that no longer can come along with where you're going. And this will be friends, this will be relationships, this will be current clients, this will be pricing. Like, it depends on what your transformation is, but these are the type of things. Letting go of releasing clothes that you used to wear. We were talking about the outer, the inner as well, or it could be like physical, it could be stuff you're eating, consuming, So that was surprising to me, because as I was studying alchemy even more, I was like, a lot of these leaders talk about going 10x or quantum leaping or shifting your identity. And I could see the 7 phases in their teachings.
Would you say that like the third with the separation is the hardest, or would you say like 4, 5, or even 7 is like, is there like one of the 7 like levels or layers that you think like, oh, this is where people tend to either loop back or get stuck, or they have trouble like breaking past?
I would say, I think it would be around the stage 3. Stage 4 is conjunction. So this is where the new frequency, the new ways of being, it's all kind of coming together. And this is more of the surrender, which is hard for people to do. To more like, this is let's let this infuse. And this is also bringing in the masculine and the feminine energies as well. Harmonizing that comes along with this phase. But then the next is actual fermentation. So this is where you're actually becoming. This is where it's like when you're doing wine, like you're aging into fine wine, or the cocoon goes into the butterfly. Like that's where that happens. The separation, and then stage 4 of letting it absorb, letting it become your new identity, are the hardest phases. I mean, they're all, the first one's hard too, because you actually you're like, okay, I actually have to make a change here. And most people, because you're like burning down something, calcination phase, that's not easy either, because it's like you actually have to take control of your life and go after what you want and make that decision. So, but I think people get stuck in the 3 because that takes courage. The stage 3 of letting go. And Benjamin Hardy talks a lot about courage, and it takes a lot of courage because you now have new standards, right? And now you gotta actually have integrity with these new standards, which means you're creating new habits and ways of being. So if it was like, let's say you wanted to, I mean, I'm also going through, I've lost almost 20 pounds. And so I have about 15 more to go. This is a new identity for this last 15. And so I'm currently having to make those moves, raise the bar, raise the standards of what I'm not going to tolerate anymore. Right. And then have those new commitments. But that takes courage, because it's comfortable to stay where you're at. And so, I would say stage 3, where you're actually letting go and holding the standards and separating what no longer aligns.
I love that you brought up courage, and I think I want to go deeper into that because, and I don't know if you've noticed the same, but it seems like there are some people, because you were talking about like pivoting your business or doing this, and I think I'm like, when I made my pivot, I just decided and moved. Like when I do things, I kind of just decide. From what you see, why do some people like move through the process and they're able to like drop things, new standards, don't care, let go of friends, business models, like 0 F's given, and they just like go, versus people who tend to resist more or struggle more? Like, where have you seen, is courage that thing that you think like differentiates, or what have you seen with clients, even what you observed? Oh, these people have these traits that tend to go through the alchemy process kind of like easier, even those challenging moments, but you get what I mean. They tend to allow it more versus those that don't or tend to loop back.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of what we're talking about keeps tying back to the podcast where you were on with me because I'm remembering our conversation. And a huge piece we talked about was faith and
Mm.
trust. And so I personally believe it's hard to have courage if you don't have trust and you
Mhm.
don't have the faith that that is going to work for you no matter what, that is always working for you no matter what. And this is the part too about the awareness and consciousness of alchemy. It is that it's an empowered state that you're in. And so no matter what, it's working for you. So when you're in the stage of burning things down and it's horrible and you're emotional, and even the second stage, dissolution, is where you're really emotional. This is like water energy. And the second one, if you look at real alchemy, right, scientists do, is they're putting the burnt elements into water, right? So water is an emotional frequency. And so what I'm like, what am I even talking about? Also, I think I went into this part of the dissolution. And oh yeah, the trust and the courage and the faith. And so if you don't have that trust, you can be more victim versus, okay, I'm emotional right now, but it's still working for me. This is a learning experience. This is breaking me open so I can, rise up. So there's a difference between someone who will stop themselves or keep going because they know it's working for them, even when it's challenging. They just know it's making them stronger, right? Like the hero's journey, where you have to like go through the trials and tribulations um, to get to the end, right?
With that trust and faith for you, do you feel like your trust and faith is in something like higher, like you can call it universe or spirit, whatever you, is it like that, or is it connected to your vision, or is it also like both? Like what role, because I know you talked about divinity before on your feed, and I'm like, yes, vibing the same way. How much of that is like, is it 50-50? Would you say like you need both? Can someone just be tied to like the vision they have for their business, or do you feel like that higher perspective allows them to almost feel more supported? Do you know what I mean? Like allows them to have more faith.
Yeah. I feel like everything is all as one.
Mm.
Like it's like there's a lot of separation of my personal power, my vision, divine, but I feel like it's all connected. Like when I think about my personal power and I see the vision, I hold the vision, but then also the divine orchestration that's happened with growing my company, it's all as one. I feel like it's all as one. So it is higher source for sure, but I also feel like my higher self and my intuition and that vision is connected with
Mhm.
divinity. Like when I
Mhm.
see that vision, it's like golden, right? It's like
Mhm.
such an elevated frequency of like love and anything is possible and limitlessness. And that's what divine is, right? So I feel like it's as one.
With the alchemy process, I just sparked a question. Do you feel like we are always in one of those seven, I guess, layers or stages, and then it kind of like restarts again?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're
So
going
it's like,
to that.
I feel like as soon as you get through the stages, you're
Yes.
there, and then you're like,
Yeah.
oh,
Mm-hmm.
we're in breaking down phase again. All right, here we
Yep.
go.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
just when you think like, oh no, now it's time to do that and dissolve and separate, like
Yeah.
it's never ending, not in a bad way from like a, but it's just like, oh,
Oh my
we're
gosh.
just restarting the cycle again.
Yeah. But this is the part where I'm like, ooh, people need to know more about alchemy
Yeah.
because it becomes less daunting when you're consciously aware. You're like, okay, I know right now I'm in dissolution stage. This is why it's so hard. I'm crying, whatever it is you're doing, right? And you're feeling maybe just stuck or whatever, right? And you're anxious. When you're aware of that, it becomes so much easier. Like, oh, I'm just going through this alchemy stage, but the evolution is going to be massive. But it's like this is the part with the laws of the universe, right? So like as above, so below, which is the law of correspondence, and the universe I don't know. I feel like I just heard some scientific fact where the universe is multiplying. I don't even know what the fact was, but it was insane. It was like it's continually growing and multiplying and expanding. And as above, so below. Right? So like we're the same. This is the entanglement. We're all as one. So universe is expanding continually, and so are we. But you can't keep evolving and expanding without change or transformation. It's just not
Hmm.
possible. That's why I think it's so important to bring in alchemy, because I think people are like, okay, I'm going to be that $1 million a year woman. I'm just going to be her. And it's like, well, no, there's so many components to this: the burning down, the letting go, the separation, the actually, the integration part, the being, the feminine, the masculine, like all of that has to happen to get to that end part. But then, yes, once you become that, we're always evolving. And so you'll do the alchemy process again.
Would you also say, because I feel like I just thought of this, people try to skip steps in the alchemy process? Like they want to, they're either like in the separation or they want like in the surrender, but they're not willing to first like have the dissolution or the breaking down. It's like you have to go through that order. Otherwise, you're
Mhm.
not creating the space for
Yeah.
the new to come in. It's like, well, no, I want to probably go to like 4, 5, 6, or 7, and they want to skip like the burning down or the letting go. They're like, oh, I'll let go when. And it's like, no, you can't go to 3 and then only do 1 and 2 once you have proof of 3. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I feel like your nervous system work would come into this really well. With I'm thinking in the dissolution in the second phase, where this is the very emotional stage, because it's like you don't even recognize yourself, or whatever it was, your business model, your relationships, whatever it is you're shifting into is not familiar. So there's going to be this part of wanting to go back,
Hmm.
because you're like, this is hard, because you're feeling pain, or you're there, this is the ego death in stage 2, right? So this is hard when you're going through that, and you're really trying to lead through soul, and that can be very emotional. Like even for me right now with my shift, there's days where it feels like, oh my gosh, like this, I feel, yeah, it doesn't, it feel, you kind of have this lower frequency feel as you're, it's like you're in the darkness, like the dark night of the soul. And many people can have a dark night of the soul through this process, depending on how deep you're going. And like I went through that when I left teaching and went into being an entrepreneur. I went through a big dark night of the soul, but that can be really hard. And so even the nervous system regulation would be amazing to integrate into that phase.
With all like the change and going through the alchemy process, and as someone who like you're going through a change now, you've changed so much obviously from the kindergarten and transforming and evolving. How have you handled, and how would you recommend people handle when you keep changing and everyone else around you maybe doesn't change, or their response to you changing and evolving, and like you're doing this but now you're doing that, and now you're bringing in like more alchemy talk, and it's like, what, you're changing again, and like
Yeah.
maybe they still view you as a kindergarten teacher.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? Like,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I feel like this is so big for so many women, especially, is it's not even just themselves going through the alchemy process, but it's also the response of their environment, be it husband or partner or loved ones or even clients, people online. It's their response even to the evolution.
Yeah, because it can be your own clients as well. I was a lot of bringing in the strategy on how to scale into your 6-figure year and scale into your, whatever, 10K months. That was like one of my signature programs. So a lot of the women who are coming into my world were really seeking that. I want the strategies and the foundations to scale into 10K months. Now I'm going into alchemy work. So, but the way I see it is I'm shifting. So either they'll come with me or they won't. But either way, there's going to be people who I'm for. So there is that confidence and that trust piece coming in again
Mhm.
with it. And I mean, I've pivoted and shifted so much with my identities that now I just more laugh it off. If the only person that says something is my husband, he'll make a joke. He'll be like, "Okay, wait, you're this yesterday. I can't keep track," and I just laugh, right? Because it's just like he's not doing this type of work that I am, so he just doesn't get it. And that's usually, it just makes me laugh, because people just, they don't get it if they're not in this world or this realm, or they're not intentionally trying to transform. Conscious. This is the conscious awareness piece. So I just kind of laugh, and I just understand people aren't on the journey that I'm on, and that's okay.
So funny you say that. My fiance Kurt's the exact same way. He's like, I can't keep up. You're
Yeah.
this, and then now we're doing this, and now we're evolving to this. I'm like, when you evolve fast, yes, we evolve. Like it's
Yeah.
a new thing. And I don't know about you. Sometimes I feel like if you knew me last week, like you don't know me now. Like I'm an entirely different person.
Yes. Oh
If
yeah.
you've known me before this point, I'm sorry, she's like dead. She's gone. You need to get to
Yeah.
know me on a whole new level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's like with alchemy, I feel like it can be sometimes that fast where
Mhm.
you feel like a different person when you try to access even that version of you. Maybe you feel this way about like the kindergarten, like you can remember her, but it actually feels like a different cellular version of you.
Oh yeah. Like I can even imagine going back to her. Yeah. But I do remember waking up in the morning sometimes and feeling really displaced because all I knew is I was a school teacher. You know, I got my master's in education. I had done all these qualifications after all these years. And I remember having that. This is the part where it's like, it's not an easy process or it's not all light and positive. Because I remember having that feeling in my body of feeling, it's hard to explain, but it's like displaced. You
Yeah.
feel displaced. And I guess because it felt like home before, but that wasn't my truth anymore. Right. So, yeah.
That's such a good word, displaced. That
Mhm.
is, yeah, I love that word because it does describe that feeling
Yeah.
perfectly. You feel displaced.
Yeah. Something, and that's because you're in the transition, you're in the kind of murky middle, is what I call it. It reminds me, actually, a good analogy is when I lived in Australia for a couple years, I went into my master's there and then I taught for a year. I also had moved in with an Australian. I fell in love. And anyway, I married a Canadian. We're not, people always ask, they're like, is that who you married? I'm like, no. Anyway, didn't work out. I came home. But I remember when I lived in Australia, it was that same feeling of I love it here, but it didn't feel like home. Like I always had this feeling of my body was not belonging here. It was like this displaced feeling. And so, you know, when you go home or if you feel like you go to your parents' house or your mom's house or whatever, like when I go to my mom's, this is like, oh, this is home. It's familiar, right? So the displaced part is if you've ever traveled or you've lived abroad, you would understand what I'm talking about. Once you get home, you're like, I'm home. That's what it feels like, that displaced.
With that displaced, that's part of the question I'd love your take on. Because you know I would displace vicious feeling at home, but with that edge and with that dissolution or being in the void or that dark night, it doesn't necessarily feel home. And I think sometimes people think that the edge or the challenge, like, oh, it's not aligned or it's misaligned. And I'm like, is it misaligned or are you just being called forward into a new level of yourself that you're not quite willing to claim? So I'd love to hear your perspective of how someone can decipher, you know, is this my evolution? Is this, you know, part of the alchemy process where I'm stretching into something new? Or is this like a no? And even like, is there a somatic cue that you feel, or like, how would you describe being able to differentiate misalignment for just that uncomfortable, sometimes displaced alchemy process that is part of the journey that you're going to get to the other side and it will feel like home once you transform?
Yeah. I love this question because I'm in this right now. Literally going through this right now. The biggest part is I always bring it back to soul and what are my desires. So even though, you know, because you'll hear stories where it'll be like, I shifted and then instantly I had, you know, 100K months and all these opportunities and it just like happened so fast. Well, it's not always going to be like that. And so you can question, maybe this isn't aligned. Maybe this wasn't meant to be. But this is the part where we bring it back. What do you really want? What do you want? That's what I say to my clients. What do you want? And then they tell me, I'm like, okay, well, if that's what you want, we're going to go there. It's not that it's not, maybe it's not working overnight like you want it to, but if this is a desire, then it's meant for you. It's not misaligned. It's just not always going to happen overnight. And so an example would be right now with my shift going into an alchemy leader. Actually, as soon as I shifted that, I had many invites to go on podcasts and doing some speaking around it. But it's not that all of a sudden all these clients have come my way and my income's exploded. But I see that bigger vision of where I want to go. And then what are some moves I can make now that's aligned with that vision? Because I know that that's what I want, even though it's not just happening overnight. But yes, I've had some opportunities, but it's like, okay, you see that vision. So it's going to happen. And this is where I talk about the micro moves that lead to the macro. Because again, I think some people just want the results to come overnight or just to happen instantly. And who you become, well, now your reality has to catch up with that, right? With that new frequency. And so an example would be, okay, I have this bigger picture, with being known for alchemy leader and the laws of the universe and intuition, all of that, speaking on stage, sharing my story of how I grew my product company with these principles. So what do I do now though? Because it's not like I'm going on these big stages and getting paid thousands of dollars for this right now, or a book's out or anything like that. But it's like, well, what can I do right now? Okay, I just booked a local studio, like a beautiful yoga, Zen type studio. And I'm going to have a women's event. And I've already booked the date. And it's going to be on alchemy, laws of the universe, and intuition. And it's for women in business. Like, we got to start somewhere. Mm-hmm. I started talking about it on my podcast, my content. So I'm positioning myself as the one to go to. So this is really about radical responsibility.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, this isn't meant for me. That's why I always say, like, well, what does your soul want? Okay, she wants that. Okay, well, then you get to have it. But make moves that align with that end. That's why it's good to see that big vision, because then you can reverse engineer and go, okay, well, what would she be doing? And start there.
I love that you bring this up and really being anchored into the long term and not the short term validation. Because like you said, most of the time, a lot of the time, you may not get that instant validation, or it may not show up in the way that you think about it, right? Like you said, like you're getting invited to more podcasts. Like there is proof, there are signs. You may want more, obviously, but there's always going to be a momentum that builds from that if you can stay anchored into long term and not just look for the short term validation of it's quote unquote working. Because like you said, it's always working, it's always transforming, but the minute you go into it's not, you're going to re-loop yourself in the alchemy process.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I love this. I feel like we've touched on so many great products too, but topics. What would you like to leave us with when it comes to, we're called Beyond Limits, something to allow people listening to live beyond limits, essentially, or something that really helps you live beyond limits?
This is so basic, but it's like, this is where we talked about at the beginning, where it's bringing it back to that, where you're the creator of your own reality. Everything is mental. You're consciously creating in every moment. And it is so basic, but I think is the biggest thing that people overlook in every single moment, when that voice in their head is going, but this isn't for me, but this isn't working, so it's never going to work. Right? So this is our subconscious mind coming in. So the biggest message I would say is stop looking for these, I already touched on this, but all these millions of different strategies and answers. It's like, it comes down to that. Like, that is the biggest thing. You get to create your own reality, and you're the creator of this, and you have to move with that on a daily.
I know people think that sounds simple, but it's really not. Yeah. Like, it's actually so, when you sit in that and you're like, it is so deeply profound. Like, every single moment you are creating that, which, like you were talking about, very empowering with alchemy. It's very empowering to know that you are creating every moment, because in every moment you have the opportunity to create what you want. Yeah. So to me, it's very freeing and empowering, but people get so unconscious and in autopilot and reacting to their environment instead of realizing, oh, I actually have the power to change this right now through my thoughts, through my behavior, through who I'm being. And I think the more people can live in that and come back to that versus operating out of like habit or reaction, they'll start to realize like, oh, I actually am that powerful. Like, oh, these things actually do happen when I bring that conscious awareness to the fact that I am the creator. And it's like, all right, what do I want to create today?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Charissa. Where can people find you, learn more about your work, your alchemy? I'm loving the fact that you separate it into stages. that to me is so cool. So yeah, where can people find you and connect with you?
You can come over to Instagram. That's where I'm most active. So the Charissa Lynn. And I have a podcast as well, which I have recorded phase 1 and phase 2 of Alchemy. So phase 3 is coming out. So if you want to hear each episode where I break it down and go a little deeper into alchemy in your business, you can head over there, Magic to Millions podcast. And then www.intuitionrevolution.ca is my website.
Amazing. We're going to have all of that linked down below. I'm definitely going to listen to those episodes. I love how you're breaking this down. And I also came on Chris's podcast as well. So you're going to go over there at least and like make sure you listen to all the alchemy episodes, the one I did with her, because there's going to be so much value in it for you, really, in terms of not only, yes, making more money, expanding your business, but doing it from that very soul aligned place, being tapped into that and all of the magic that that brings. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.